titled my presentation, I'm giving just a very brief context of this topic of nomadism in art, and especially in relation to the two artists whom I invited for this event. Okay, so my field of work and my space is art history and museums. And this is the discipline which is very much honed in Western Europe, in Italy, in Florence specifically, and then it was developed by Germans. I do find kindred spirit in anthropologists, so I'm very happy to be here among you guys, because anthropology of art and anthropology is also I share a lot of interest in theoretical framework. Indeed, Alfred Gell is my long-term anthropologist whom I follow, and my first monograph, a monastery on the book, on the move, is built on Alfred Gell's theories of personhood, agency, and importance of oral histories in Mongolia. Allow, right? Allow or not? Allow or hihimo? Deny hihimo? Deny humans. I also wanted to mention the other two anthropology organized projects that I was part of, emerging subjects, where I wrote an article about Balthazar with a lens on neoliberalism, and it was titled Mongolia is in Business. And during COVID, I also collaborated with anthropologists in Europe, in Switzerland, to build an international exhibition called Asphalt Lines and Lives. And I'm mentioning this specifically because I used the concept alternative that Bullock specifically talks about in 2006. And the project was then titled Alternative Realities of Mongolia. Now, current research, and this is where I'm fitting into this forum, is my book manuscript on Mongolian contemporary art, which hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm finishing very soon. And the big question in this manuscript is about art historical contribution. So what is the relevance and the position of Mongolian art and artists within the global contemporary art? This is a very big field in itself. And because of art historical biases, I open up my theoretical framework to very interdisciplinary research, and I work, as you will see from this context, to different voices. So this forum, I invited two performance artists, two conceptual artists, a very prominent figure, Inkbolt, and emerging voice, Mongolian, specifically to question open the discussion about nomadism and identity and urban pastoral livelihoods and the concept of Eurasia. What is Eurasia nomadism in art? I really like the title of this forum, which says World Problem, Nomad Solution. It seems like you really put your finger on a pulse of contemporary art, Dr. Bullock, because the word nomad is so ubiquitous now in contemporary art. In fact, in 2 weeks there will be a global nomadic art project here in Mongolia, organized by South Korean group. Pertaining to particular Mongolian artists, there are several exhibitions going on in Düsseldorf in Germany with this lens of Eurasia and with this lens of nomadism, the topics of this forum. There is an exhibition in Düsseldorf organized by Gregory Hansen titled Healing the Earth. I visited the exhibition last month to write a review of it, and there are two exhibitions coming up in Europe again. One is in London, in Royal Academy of British Royal Academy, another one in Museum Riedberg in Switzerland. 2025-27, both are with the lens of Eurasia and nomadism, but organized by these Western institutions, where they're inviting Mongolian participation, but they are also showing that the concept of Eurasia is different from Eurasianism, as it was mentioned during this forum, but Eurasia is an artistic concept itself, and it has its roots in Europe. And so just a few words about that. So of course, it leads us to post-war Germany, right, to this figure, Joseph Beuys, who was fascinated with Eurasia, with nomads, with Mongols, right? And his artistic identity was built with felt as materiality, as well as wax, honey, organic materials, and to heal Europe after war. And he was claiming that he was saved by the Tatars, right? And so this was healing Europe after war. He was not the only one, though, and as Healing the Earth, the exhibition in Dusseldorf prominently shows us, they still maintaining legacy and impact of Joseph Beuys in the art of European artists, especially of German artists. Beuys has its own living in Mongolia, but in Healing the Earth exhibition, I'm just showcasing two works of art, one by Mongolian German artist Uranchimeg, made of felt, following really this materiality of what this artistic notion of Eurasia is built about, and German artist Thomas Stricker, who uses wax to create this coding system about what he says, the difference between nomadic, pastoral nomadic, and the sedentary cultures and civilizations, which he titles as 108 Questions to a Nomadic Woman with a Gun. You see these videos in the background of this big installation. Those are 8 anthropological fieldwork interviews that he conducted when he was in Mongolia just a few months ago to question why nomads do choose to live nomadic livelihood in Mongolia, and why don't they choose to live in urban cities. However, as I mentioned, Joseph Beuys was not alone in Düsseldorf, fascinated with Mongolia, fascinated about materiality of steppe habitat. And I'm just mentioning only one person because of limitation of time. This is Uranchimeg, right? I don't know if any of you have seen this, but this is currently in Münster. It was built in 1993 for Venice Biennale, for which he won Golden Lion Award. And the idea was Eurasia again. It was idea of connectivity between the continents. Here is the archival photo, which through my research I found, and that yurt, which was shipped from Mongolia by Uranchimeg, visitors only had to lean inside. They were not allowed to go inside, and when you enter inside, there were masks taken off his face, and there was a candle lit. So it was sort of life and death and memento mori type of installation inside the yurt. Outside, surrounding the ger, Uranchimeg built the sculptures of Marco Polo on the right-hand side and Genghis Khan. So he was fascinated by the Mongols, just like his Düsseldorf colleague Joseph Beuys was. And his entire concept his entire artistic vision was shaped by this idea of Eurasia. But this is not ending with Düsseldorf and with these post-war artists. This is where we are on today, in 2024, when you visit the Venice Biennale. This is the first thing that you see as you enter the pavilion of international artists. It is a yurt, and surrounded by the photographs of refugees and transnational artists. And as I mentioned before, nomad is a ubiquitous word now, identity of the artist as nomad, and then youth is becoming one of the hallmark of this new concept of artists in contemporary times. So my question in this research is, so what is used for Mongolian artists who are inheriting, living in this tradition? Eurasia, the concept that German artists or Korean American artists share, this is still kind of essentialized vision of connectivity across the steppe. Here, however, Inkbold, he used one-person yurt, which he is taking across series of performance works. 2008, it was in North Rotterdam, and note how the yurt was built, just the borderline between land and water. Of course, the gear is for the steppe, right? Architecture that is built to be in the steppe, not on the beach, on the shore. But the contrasting between this very industrial architecture and the minuscule gear of Inkbold is very much in the core of artistic question of Inkbold. And he himself wearing a beard and protruding himself as self-orientalizing himself within his performances. Here's in 2011 in Manchester, Biennale, and again he built his gear to really create this visual contrast between this formidable sedentary architecture versus very organic, minuscule, vulnerable, fragile cell of his own home. Not only he builds this architecture, creating this visual contrast, but the door is open. Gear is always unlocked architecture. It's open for every passers-by. And so Inkbold, he invites people inside. He communicates, and communication is also very important for him. So you can see in Rotterdam, he was walking and talking with people, even though he doesn't speak much English, but with body language, he manages to create a very meaningful connection with these strangers. Here's another installation of the same mobile home in 2011 in Jeju Island. Self-orientalizing and othering is not unique in art. Here we have, for instance, Asian artists such as Yayoi Kusama and Yoko Ono walking on the streets of New York City to claim their identity and creating connections on the streets of Europe. The same way, walking with the structure, wooden structure, which he built as his own cell, as his own frame. We did that in 2015 in Venice, where in the inaugural pavilion of Mongolia, Inkbold was one of the two artists representing the country. Another very important aspect of Inkbold, and different from the other German artists that we saw, is that participatory notion of his performance work, collaborative notion. And here, for instance, he invites the passers-by, those who have never seen yurt or have never lived in yurt, they come and help him and create this spontaneous connection in situ and spontaneous collaboration, teamwork. In fact, he puts in, these are the photos from his Venice Biennale 2015, where he opens his door and welcome to my home. But again, it's through body language, spontaneity is all part of this installation pieces. In other words, these are not only gear where you can just lean inside and have this notion of Eurasia, but it's habitat where you connect through, without cell phones, but connect through body language and humanity. Inkbold also creates two-dimensional pieces, all utilizing organic materials from his experience living in countryside. These two artists also prominent among the other artists that they have experienced actually being nomads themselves. They were living in countryside and living in city, and so they having the culture of both livelihoods. So in the exhibition that you will see in Nation Gallery, you will see also very large pieces, two-dimensional pieces, which is hardly to be, they cannot be called as paintings because they are two-dimensional objects used where horse down felt, animal skin, ash, haddock, and other objects are used. And so in approaching this artist, I really like the idea of mutuality of movement that was discussed by British geographer Doreen Massey. Doreen Massey talked about social relations, but also about how the difference between the public and exterior spaces collaborate with each other to inform each other. And there is no division between public and private. And her notion of global sense of place is very much relevant here, even though Ingvald himself is building this mobile home to kind of think about the youth and the belonging of youth, but it is the global sense of home that is very much relevant in the discussion. Another thing that when the concept of local versus global, local and dichotomy between local and global is very huge in arts and humanities, and especially in art history, so this is also another lens of discussion that Ingvald provides by these works. Mongolian is another conceptual artist, and her mutuality of movement is not with installation pieces that you saw or used, but it is with non-human agents and with landscapes. And this is another interesting approach because of this movement, of this mobility, because the artist is taking her own body with her hands or feet as a vehicle for communication and connection. Again, it's all about communication and connection, but again, here it's not among the humans and strangers, making the strangers as a team, but it's about landscape and it's about non-human agents. And so just a few art, because I would like to invite these artists to the stage so you actually can ask direct questions to them. This is monumental painting that you will see in the exhibition, and it is built by the footprints of the artist herself. Mapping the speciality with her footprints was another installation piece that he titled yesterday, and it was built in 2021, which she's aiming to walk across the horizon to this invisible realms. But again here, similar to the previous artist, she also invites their participants, invites the audiences to be part of her performance work and connect with her through the performance work. Another interesting work that I find very important within the discussions of global contemporary art is Shukiteng, or balancing connection. And this is where again she uses her own body to come across with this particular tree where she found nests of bats and birds, and she wanted to become one with them. Next interesting work, and I will invite you to ask direct questions to the artists, which she built also as a land art outdoors, again using her body as connecting piece right here. And its main materiality is horse, hair, and iron, as well as shearing is a very important part. In this photograph you cannot see this, but she was telling me how she was shearing tea during this performance piece with the audience. I love her photography work. I think she is very strong in her photography, and I love how she uses her body again as a piece that creates this mediation between the sculpture body becomes the sculpture here, and her painting herself. This is the other photography, which you will see the original in the exhibition, where she's standing from the back. The tattoo was specifically placed here for this photography reason, and her hair is covered by yogurt, by butter. This new work she created for this exhibition in National Gallery, so I invite you to see it and ask questions about this. This is an early work built by horsehair and iron wire, which again is showing in the National Gallery. It's a quite large installation, and so I invite you also to converse with the artist herself. So let me just conclude and raise questions that we can actually discuss with the artists before I invite my colleague to speak about music as the next part. So the question of artists as nomad is huge in contemporary art discourse right now, but what is nomadic identity for artists who are living with this tradition from their childhood? What is local and global in theory based on Dorian Massey's view of global sense of place? And how would the communication and teamwork now create this idea of transnational artists, something that Claire Harris, another anthropologist who wrote about Tibetan artists, actually used, criticizing art history as a Western discipline. She limited to geographical borders, she suggested to use the perspective of transnational artists. So, what is the question of transnational artists in Mongolia specifically, when we don't have the questions of citizenship, belonging, like it was the case with Tibetan artists? Thank you, and I will close right here.